Welcome back to the PMR podcast. My name is Mitch. I'm an addict alcoholic. Super excited for this one, episode 43.
What's up, guys? I'm Andrew. I'm an addict alcoholic. 43 episodes. That's crazy. Just to think about before we even get going, that's it's insane. We've done this 43 times, almost a straight year of consistent episodes, which is pretty cool. And I thank you for that, Mitch. That's amazing. But anyway, really, really excited for this episode. As you can see, we got a third face on the screen here. My boy Aidan. Really, really excited for him to share his story today. Aidan is, a friend. Even though he's a couple years younger than me, I can say he's a mentor to me. He's been a power of example for me. A friend in treatment. We both pretty much arrived at treatment around the same time. Went through the whole heroin program. I saw Aidan go through it at an earlier age than I did, and that was inspiring to me. Still a high school guy at that time. And he's gone on as a Division 1, student athlete. And seeing how recovery has come to play in his life, the gifts that he's gotten from it is a gift for me to see, and it keeps me going. So really, really excited to have you on, Aidan, and share your story. Welcome, my friend.
Thanks, Drew. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for those kind words, dude. Yeah, it's pretty special being on this podcast, man. I mean, I watch it all the time. I guess I should, maybe didn't think I was ready, but I'm ready. I'm ready to tell my story, man.
Yeah, it was funny. I was texting you back and forth before we decided to pull the trigger, and he was like, "I don't know if I'm ready, like to tell my story or whatever." And I was like, "Listen, if Dan Powers is ready, you're ready." Love you, Dan. But you know, realistically, like nobody's ever really ready to tell their story, but it's a kind of a therapeutic, kind of cathartic exercise. So I'm glad you said yes. I'm glad you're here. I think Mitch has got a question for you before we start.
Yeah, super excited to have you on and meet you. And we were talking before and seemed like a really good guy. So I'm excited to hear your story. And just from what I heard real briefly, it sounds like we may have, and what Andrew said too, some overlap too. So I always like hearing those sort of stories. But in terms of the question for you, I guess I would ask, when you think of an addict and alcoholic now, being like you're 2 years into sobriety, but when you think of an addict or an alcoholic now, what does that look like to you? Like what comes to mind?
It's a good question. I think now, having been through this whole process and meeting so many different people with different stories and different struggles, different personalities, different, ages, like genders, race, all that, like I just think of an addict alcoholic or someone who just deserves another chance, or they deserve help that maybe they've never received in their life, or maybe they deserve new people in their lives who will sacrifice their better being for the addict or the alcoholic. I feel like there's like a stigma that addicts and alcoholics are people who have no self-control, or people who lack like just discipline, and maybe even they're like, it's just part of who they are and it's something they can't change. But I feel like having met and been through, like, and just seeing how such good people can be plagued by like this disease, I just now see like anyone that I see or hear of that's struggling, or like even when you see like a homeless person on the street that's doing the lean, and like they're like an addict, like that there's more to them than just that addiction or the alcoholism, that they have a story. They're a human that deserves another chance, and they deserve, you know, maybe a sort of like love or empathy that they've never received in their lives. I think that's, yeah, I just think of, I think I have a lot more empathy now for people who struggle with this disease. I think that makes sense.
What I hear too when you say that is like compassion, right? Like I think, and I'm curious to hear for you how it's changed, before you started this process of recovery to now. How that image has changed for you, because I hear a lot of compassion in those words you just said. And I know for me, before I started getting, before I got sober, I got into recovery, I didn't have that level. So how has it changed for you?
I think I feel like that compassion is just, it's just grown, and I see, I think I can, I guess, like empathize with them more, and kind of open my eyes a little more and understand maybe why they behave or act a certain way. And it's not just because they're an alcoholic or an addict. It's because there's there's just trauma that they've dealt with in their life, or there's loss. And there's people I know in my life, especially before I got treatment, who were active addicts and alcoholics. And I would just be just embarrassed to be around them, or like watch their behavior, because I'm like, this guy's got no self-control. There's no discipline. Like, all he cares about is himself. And then I think going through recovery, I think it taught me to be like, well, why is it that way? It can't just be like it doesn't add up that it's just this person doesn't care about how they act, how they treat people, who they are. They just want to get high or drunk. It's more just like there's a story to them, or like they dealt with something traumatic in their past that affected their entire lives. And like, I think people maybe like blame addicts or alcoholics for using that as an excuse, or like using, I guess, like past difficulties or like the struggles in their lives as a reason to use. But it's more just like, unfortunately, that's who I am, and I went through this, and it's not who I am, but it plays a significant role in their life. Like, there's that shit isn't easy to just deal with. And yeah, I think my compassion has grown, and like my empathy has really grown. And I think I just think addicts and alcoholics are so much more than just when you slap a label on them as an alcoholic. Like they're still such great, like there's so many great people who were just plagued by this disease. And it sucks to see now that, looking back on him, like, man, I wish I asked that guy how he was doing, or I wished like I took the time to sit down and listen, and maybe get a better understanding of why alcohol fuels their decisions and their lifestyle. But
Welcome back to the PMR podcast. Before we get into this week's episode, I wanted to share with you our first partnership with Clean Cause. Clean Cause is a pretty awesome company. They sell yerba mate drinks. The founder is in recovery, and they put 50% of their net profits back into those struggling with addiction and alcoholism. Absolutely love their company, absolutely love their message, and very thankful for them to partner with us. If you're interested in getting some, you go to their website, cleancause.com. All right. When you're checking out, you're going to enter in Mitch20 into the discount code area, and that's going to get you 20% off on these fire drinks. Right now, I got that cherry lime. All right. Enjoy this week. Yeah. I feel like I agree with you. It's like putting the whole picture behind someone, instead of like, it's really easy to label someone and cast them away and not look deeper into it. If it's like, oh, that's an addict and alcoholic, good luck to them. But when you like look at someone and you have that experience and going through that and getting into recovery and stuff, when you see someone struggling, I think we feel that much deeper on the other side because we know what that pain is like. And I feel you on the homelessness stuff. I like see that a ton where I live, and I've gotten to a point where it's like semi what's the word? Desensitized to it. But it's rough. It's rough to see people kind of like that, and a lot of people look at them like there's no way they can ever come out of that, you know. Uh, but I like what you said about basically seeing the whole picture in someone. I think that's a good thing to highlight.
Hmm. I think too, you have like, and I think honestly, and you could touch on this in your story, but a lot of it, a lot of your understanding comes from, I think, in your time in treatment, and it was the same thing for me. Like, you look at somebody in treatment, and you and I both know like some of the even the individuals that we're talking about here, like, and you like I just have an idea in my head. Even if I'm like in the mind frame where, yeah, like they're an alcoholic and an addict, but they're also a good person or whatever. But I still have an idea of like, this is what this person's about, like whatever. And then we get up in a group or like, they're sharing their story and all this stuff comes out like
Mm,
about their life and trauma and the things that they've dealt with. And that just added to my like, I was like, oh, holy shit. Like, like people go through a lot and they don't wear it. Like they keep it down and it fuels their disease. Like, but we don't see that. Like we see it, a beautiful, wonderful person on the surface, and deep down they got, all this stuff that happened, or is still going on to this day. And it adds that level of like empathy, like you said, because it's easy for us to, even in treatment, even as knowing that we have that same disease, like still just say like, yeah, that like that person's just like me or whatever. Like they're just addict, whatever. And now it's hard for me, it's hard for me to just do that because now I'm like, I've seen so many instances of like somebody says something that they went through and I'm like blown away
mhm.
to the point where it's like, all right, now I kind of can't assume anything anymore. People are gonna surprise me left and right with their life experience.
Right.
So I think that was a great answer,
Thanks.
for sure. But um, hoping, you know, that you can kind of go into your story, and give us the background, tell us where you're from, tell us, what it was like for you and what happened and what it's like now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. I guess I'll start. I mean, like Andrew, I mean, I grew up right around Andrew here in, you know, Boston, suburban area of Boston. I grew up, big family. I'm one of five kids, two great parents. Um, I grew up playing all those sports, hanging out with my buddies after school, doing what a normal kid does. But I think I think it was always obvious since I was a young age that something was a little different about me. My mom likes, at least my mom likes to say that. I never really saw it until maybe when she started describing things I would do as a kid. I said, well, that makes a lot of sense, and that's not very normal. Okay, but I think I think she would always describe me as a very anxious kid. Um, I was very, very particular and anxious. Like the early onset OCD was very obvious, which I never. I mean, I guess as a kid, you don't really understand why it's like that, but it was. And I was just an anxious kid. I wasn't really comfortable in my skin. I wasn't, I was. I wouldn't say I was shy, but I was definitely timid. Um, meeting new people, all that stuff, and that carried on throughout elementary school and middle school. That anxiety, it grew, and I guess later on into middle school was when I really started to, I guess, like mature and not mature, but I guess I think I started to realize that I didn't really like who I was, like as a person or as a kid. I wasn't really comfortable with who I was. I wasn't happy with my performance playing sports because I always loved sports. I was an athletic kid, and that was always my getaway, was just like playing sports. It was hockey, it was soccer, lacrosse, basketball, you name it, football. I played them all, and I think I let everything go in those 45 to 60 minutes where I'm on that field and on the ice, where I didn't have to worry about what people are thinking about me, because there's no reason to. My only goal is like, I just want to score a goal. I want to go score a goal and celebrate with my teammates or make a big hit. Like, I want to play sports because this is what I love. And I think growing up in a big family, competitive family, we're all driven by each other. Like, we all have a competitive spirit. You know, we got the Irish anger in us a little bit, and I think that is a blessing and a curse. I mean, shit, my name's Aidan Maguire. Like, I mean, damn. I just think that since that young age, my that competitiveness and the anger, but also my timidness and anxiety, just clashed against each other, because I was so confident, but I was confident but not confident in who I was, and I was happy but sad, and I was, you know, angry but, quiet and timid. I think I just had a lot of conflicting emotions and feelings about myself and other people, and my perspective on who I really was. And I think that all really started to hurt me. I'm an overthinker. I think late in middle school was when I really started to feel that, like, dang, I don't really like who I am or what I'm about.
Mm.
And it's not like I had, and I didn't really, and I think I always question why I felt that way, because I never had like a leading, my family life was great. My parents were the great, like, they, to this day, they're my best friends and my biggest supporters, and they do anything for me and my siblings. And I think when you're given so much love and support and you still can't find a way to be happy and enjoy life, I think that is really, really struggle. Like, it's just a conflicting, and it's a weird feeling, and it's like crippling, because it makes you not want to get up in the morning. It makes you sit in your bed and sleep all day and not talk to people. And I didn't really know how to explain to my mom in the 8th grade that I was depressed, and I didn't want to explain it to her, I guess, as well. And I think that that pain kind of carried on into high school, and I was still really small. I hadn't grown coming into my freshman year of high school, and I went to a private school after the 7th grade. I went into a private school, and it's an all boys Catholic school where I didn't really know anyone, and I still had that anxiety and that self doubt and that self deprecation. And I think I carried that into all my relationships, meeting people there. So I didn't make a lot of friends, and I played sports, but I wasn't that great, and I started to fall out of interest with them, because I was like, well, why would I do that? I'm not good anymore. This is just a waste of my time and my mental energy, because I'm putting too much pressure on myself and this and that. And I think that's when I started hanging out with the wrong people, because I think I found those people where I'm like, hey, like, this guy gets it. He's depressed. This guy gets it. He's got some shit going on at home. Like, he doesn't like who he is. And like, I think people like that, it's like, it's a terrible perfect storm, because you have like, it's like a reason to use, or like to, I guess, like to, it's like an excuse to escape who you are, like the reality of your life. And I think hanging out with those people who are like, hey, like, smoking weed and drinking is the solution to this, because maybe they were influenced at a younger age, and they found this was like almost like a cure to their feelings of depression and anxiety and all that shit. And so, that freshman year, as soon as I started smoking weed, I loved it, man. I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, I don't have to, like, everything, like, I'm back to just, I'm happy, I'm cool, like, I'm calm. I got no anxiety about anything really. I got nothing to worry about except for what I'm gonna go get to eat for food because I'm hungry now. And since that day, it just turned into me every single day smoking weed and drinking on the weekends and even drinking like on the weekdays at some points. And this was all freshman year of high school. And like, I think it turned into like a reason for me to be like, well, why, like, who really cares? Like, I can hide this. This is easy to hide from my parents. I go to school away from home. I can get high all day, away from my house, away from my family and my parents. And I can just, like step away from reality. I can be something I'm not. And I've tried to be something I was not for the whole year. And I kept drinking, and it was the same type of, like, just the numbing of feeling and emotion. I was so addicted to that. And I think, as anyone knows who used or drank, I think it became impossible to hide. And, little things turn into big things, and small lies turn into big lies. And like, I didn't even mention before, I think my first addiction was lying. I was a grade A pathological liar. I loved lying. I was so good at it. I loved getting away with lying. I loved being able to lie and have people believe me and just think like, nah, they're not worried. They're not. And like, just, I didn't want anyone to worry about me. I wanted to just, I'm going to do me, even though my habits were terrible. My decision making was horrible. But I was like, well, as long as I can lie my way out of it, there's nothing to worry about. They're not going to be worried about me if I'm telling them right to their face, lying through my teeth. I'm happy. There's nothing wrong. And like, the questions would come up. Like, you can sniff out a depressed freshman in high school, that it's easy. I mean, the signs are obvious. And I think lying through my teeth, thinking I'm getting away with it, but in reality, my parents, my friends, my family, they're not stupid. They knew what was going on. And I think they quickly picked up on how I had no idea how to deal with what I was going through. So I pretended like I wasn't going through it, or I pretended like people wouldn't get it, or people wouldn't want to. I don't want to waste people's time telling them that, like, yeah, man, I'm depressed and like my life sucks. I hate who I am. And that continued on sophomore year. COVID hits, and it just turns into like a spiral, man. It just turned bad. Like, I'm taking classes right in at this desk right here in my room, my whole family home, and I'm high all day long. I'm smoking weed. I'm drinking like by myself on a Tuesday during science class. It's like, it started to get really bad. And I think that COVID was just like isolating me from playing sports, and maybe being like spending just that little bit of time with people who maybe weren't even my friends, but those people who understood that I was maybe going through something, and they brought me happiness and joy. And not being able to see them and seeing my family and fighting with them, like, I didn't even want to spend time with them. All I wanted to do was get out of the house and go get high, go get drunk. And I think, I want to say it was maybe late in the summer of that, when my parents were started to really get worried, and they sat me down. They're like, "What's going on here?" And I probably cried a little bit, broke down. I was like, "I'm just sad, all this shit, COVID." Like, I blamed everything on COVID when it wasn't really the problem. I had my problems went way deeper than that, but I didn't want to tell them that. I didn't want them to be worried that I was just depressed all the time. And it sucked, man. Like, it was terrible. Like, I hated waking up. I liked, for 5 seconds of my day is when I wake up, and like, I don't really like think about who I am or what I do. And then I go on about my day, and I'm like, that's right. I hate who I am. I hate what I do, what I'm about. And it just was fucking hard. It sucked and I hated it and I didn't want to make any efforts to fix it because the only efforts I knew that fixed it were smoking weed and drinking alcohol. And I think at a young age like that, it's just a dangerous combination of, especially with the COVID. Like I think it's just dangerous. So I went on, junior year comes around, school's on but off. It's really, all the COVID bullshit is going down, and I'm drinking more than I ever have. I'm still like, my habits don't get any better. They're just getting worse. And I didn't like the more fights, the more like the tension and like I think now it was hard because even my siblings were worried about me.
Mm.
And I think like I think the hardest thing hearing this at Heron was when I just remember them telling me that my siblings were like, I was scared to be around you. Like I didn't know who you were, and like you weren't Aidan. And that scared the shit out of me because I have younger siblings, and I'm supposed to be their older big brother and be the person they looked up to. Um, but I was just like a shadow of a human being. I wasn't even there. I was never there emotionally for them. And I was probably pissy and rude and just not like a good example for them. I wasn't someone who they wanted to be, which really hurt because I think everyone wants to be like their big brother. Um, and that hurt just hearing that at Heron. But yeah, I think we moved on throughout the year. I get back into sports. I finally had grown by that point. Junior year, I think I'd come into my athleticism, and D1, colleges were looking at me and they're recruiting me. And like, I just think how crazy it is how like getting recruited at that time when I was nearing my lowest point in my life, like mentally, emotionally, substance abuse wise, like, and just putting on that facade of like, hey, like, yeah, can't wait to come here, man, and be the man and win championships. And little did they know like what was going on at home. But yeah, I think finally I committed to a college, a really good school with a really good team, the sport I play, and it's just yeah. And that was ever since that day. I think that was when I really spiraled downwards because at that point I was like, I did it. I'm good. I'm going to college. I'm going to play a sport there. Like my parents cannot question me anymore. They can't question why I smoke weed or why I drink a lot. They can't because look how successful I am. Look what I'm doing. And I think like the weed and the alcohol and like that fake confidence that it gave me just took over and was like, you're the man. Look at this. Like they can't question your decision making anymore. In reality, they're just looking out for me because they didn't know like where I was half the time. They didn't know what I was doing. They're scared shitless of what I was doing and who I was, who I hung out with. Like they had no idea how like that just hanging out with really, really the wrong people, making terrible decisions at all hours of the day. Nothing that a Division 1 athlete, future Division 1 athlete would be doing other than myself. And like little did I know that I actually met plenty of people like who have gone through this same shit. You guys know exactly what like you guys collegiate athletes. You guys understood it where it's like you committed, but little did they know like you have a whole nother life outside of just athletics and like like
Oh
I
yeah.
mean holy, yeah I mean fuck. But yeah, like junior year spring comes around, I'm playing sports, like I'm pretty much high all the time. Like any chance I get, I'm smoking. I'm drinking on most weeknights, and I'm just not. like I'm not there emotionally for friends. Like I'm losing friends. Family is giving up hope on me. Like I'm lying through my teeth to any and everyone who will listen. Anyone who questions what I do, there's no truth in what I say or what I tell people I'm doing. It's all a lie. Everything I'm telling is a lie, and it's just so like I'm so unhealthy mentally. Like I was just at such a low point. I didn't know who I was and who my friends were, who was real, who was fake friends. Like I think I just get so caught up in it because at that point I'm just so selfish. Like I'm all about myself, and I'm wondering why my friends are treating me like shit. Little do I like when I'm the one that's turning a blind eye on their problems, and I'm the one that I'm the problem. I was the problem, and I wouldn't couldn't tell myself, couldn't convince myself of that. And it got to a point where it's like my parents are they don't know what to do at that point. And I didn't really know what to do at that point. Like I didn't trust anyone other than myself. I lost all faith in family and friends and God. Like I grew up an Irish Catholic kid. We went to church every Sunday, and by then, like I was like, why would God put me through? Like, why did God make me like that? Why does God allow me to be depressed and hate who I am and the way I live my life? And like just this absurd, like the things I would tell myself were just so absurd and untrue. And I was just lying to like, I think it just got so bad. Like I was lying to myself. Like I wasn't sticking to any of my morals or principles that I'd held since a kid. And the things that how my dad taught me to be a man, those when they're out the window. Like I didn't even know who I was. And they finally sat me down. We've been through a million getting caught. Like getting caught. It wasn't my first time doing it. It's my first time getting caught. And that happened a million times. And it just got to a point where my dad was like, do you know who Chris Herron is? And I was like, yeah, I've heard of him. Like he was a junkie. Like, he was a NBA player turned junkie. He's like, all right, well, you're going to have a lunch with him. He wants to meet you. And I said, all right, the fuck's this guy? Like, what? And I'm thinking, like, who's this guy? I think he is fucking. He doesn't have the time of day for me. He's like an NBA. He runs a rehab, and I didn't know he ran a rehab. Actually, I did not know that. I just knew he
Or
was
else you wouldn't have gone to lunch, son.
exactly
Don't
exactly.
lie.
Else I wouldn't have gone to fucking lunch that day. um, and so my dad tells me that, and he drives me down to Seekonk, Massachusetts, one day, and I show up and I see this big building and these tennis courts, or a tennis court and a basketball hoop and this big field. And I was like, it's a funky looking place for lunch. Okay. And we sit down and we're in the office and kind of looking around, and I'm like, what's going on here? I don't really like this. I didn't know what was going on. And Chris comes in and he sits me down, and it's just like a emotional wreck. I remember before he came by, I had my boy Drew coming by being like, oh, there he is, there he is. And I was like, who is this kid? What the fuck's going on? Like, little did I know he'd become my best friend fucking 3 months later. But yeah, I just remember that talk with Chris was kind of like a let go, where I was finally like, you know what, I need help. I can't keep up like this. I was so exhausted. I was like, dude, I'm lying through my teeth to any, like, no one trusts me, and it's not their fault. It wasn't anyone's fault other than mine, because they didn't have a reason to trust me. Why? Like, you can't trust someone that just lies through their teeth all the time. And I remember just finishing that meeting, and I was real emotional, and like I just didn't even want to like face my parents at that point, because I was just so embarrassed and disappointed. And I was just like, what, like, how did I let it get to this point? How did I let like smoking a joint with my buddies 2 years back turn to this, where it's like my family doesn't know who I am, and like my siblings are scared of me, and that like, like that hurt. Like, so that was I think my first big like not like a revelation, but I think that was my first realization, where I was like, I can't keep this up. Like I gotta fix my life. And I finally agreed, and they sent me to Heron. I met Drew, met Danny Powers, I met Chris, I met Nick, Coach Nick, man. I met so many great Mikey, like, I met so many great people there with just incredible stories, just incredible people with incredible stories, like incredibly heartbreaking things that led them to be there. And I empathize with them so much. And I just remember like it was like just sitting in on those meetings and sitting in the pit where people would smoke cigarettes and just listen to these people tell like stories of, like their active alcoholism or addiction with a wife and kids at home, or with like family that cares about them so much. And I'm just looking at myself like, if these people can do this, like, man, I need to look at myself because my problems are so much smaller than that. Like my problems are not shit compared to these people, and they're kicking ass in here, and they're doing the steps, and they're getting sober, and they're getting life coaches, and they're fighting an addiction that's gone on twice as long as mine. And just like the willpower and the community, and like everyone there had each other's back because they're like, fuck this disease. We're all good people with shitty circumstances, and we've made bad decisions, but it doesn't it doesn't mean we can't live great lives. And I think meeting people like you, Drew, and just like having things to relate about, and realizing it's like this is it's doable. Like this, like you can turn your life around, and you can live a happy life, and it doesn't have to revolve around alcohol or weed or any sort of pill or addiction. It can revolve around surrounding yourself with people you love, and just taking it one day at a time, and finding a higher power. Like for me, I think reconnecting with my spirituality, and like starting to pray more, and like thanking God for my life and not asking him why did he give me such a shitty one. Thanking him for like my family, my friends. Like that was such a big change for me. And I think like, yeah, I'm forever like, I think God, like I finally was able to be like, thank you, God, for my family. Thank you for Chris Heron. Thank you for the people in here. Like, God bless Andrew. God bless these people because they're changing my life. And I don't know if I'd be here without them. And I think it was just like, it was so special to see and feel like that change from questioning why he would let it happen, questioning why he made me this way, to thanking him for putting me through hard times, or thanking him for making me Aidan. You know what I mean? Like I think I came a long way from that. So now I'm, in college, living my best life, happy with who I am, happy with what I do. I love I love what I do. I love the people I'm surrounded by, my coaches, my teammates, my family, my friends, you guys. Like I've never had such an appreciation for the people and the things that are a part of my life. So I think it's been a great feeling to have that turnaround at a pretty young age, and to find out that like I don't have to, like I can live my best life. I can live happy and maybe help that kid who's struggling like I was. So yeah, it's all I
It's a
got.
great story,
So,
man.
thanks, man.
It's funny that you were nervous to tell it. You speak well. You speak, cohesively and with feeling, and you tell your story, very, very well. And one thing that I will say too is like, you know, a couple things, and I'll let Mitch jump in too, but that I immediately identified with, right, is that feeling like I lead two separate lives, especially in high school and college. Me for college, as I was active in college, but like even before high school, like there was me in the public, like which was I'm Mr. Athlete, alpha, whatever bullshit. And then me, internally, which was like your wording for it was like, a timid, kind of scared kid, and that's what I was. OCD is definitely part of my story as well. But like, even beyond that, like, I just like, just anxious all the time. Like, and on the outside, I'm putting out this whole bravado thing about, I'm, Mr. Athlete, whatever, funny guy, and then on the inside, I'm like, like telling, just fucking hating myself.
Mm.
So, I could identify with that. I could identify with those feelings. And the other thing too, um, that I could really identify with is, you know, that feeling of like committing to a school for college and getting in and just letting everything go. Like I let everything go. Like it's already an active addiction. Like I was already, running around doing whatever. But like after I committed, it was like all bets are off. Like I was like, F it. Like I've arrived. I'm
Yeah.
him. Like I don't have to do anything anymore. And it was almost like a giant fu to like all these people like who were ultimately just trying to keep me healthy and like had my best interest in mind, but who were always keeping me from getting high. And I was like, well, F you guys. Like I can clearly I've done this, so whatever. Like get off
Yeah.
my ass. Like I checked the box. It was sad, dude, because there wasn't any joy in it. Like I was not genuinely happy that I had committed to a school to play sports. Like
Mhm.
I was just like, check the box, everyone get off my ass. Done. Like there's no joy in that. It's poisonous. Um, and then the last thing I wanted to say, and I'm gonna let Mitch, dive in, is like, dude, like, I love the way you end your story, right? With where you're at now. Um, and the other thing I will say is that and the other thing I was gonna say is like, yeah, the kid that I met, you had first of all, you had a nice room and here. I remember going into your room and talking to you. Fucking private bathroom, fucking king
Yeah.
bed. It's a nice setup. Didn't have to share a bathroom with Dan Powers. But um, Dan's getting a lot of airtime this episode. Anyway, you like were so confused and mad and like you didn't want to be there, but immediately I saw like that you knew you had to be there.
Yeah.
You were angry, 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 but you were like, I know, like I have to be here. Like this is where I need to be. And to be a fucking 17-year-old kid that knows he has to be where you were, like I was amazing. It was an amazing thing. And your life now is like it's sweet, right? Like you're present, you're playing a high level of athletics, you have a successful season, you're at a really great academic school. um things, the exterior is looking great, right? But here's the thing, right? Like I still like, and I'm gonna divulge some information, like you still call me from time to time and you're like, Drew, like I ain't feeling too hot. Like, and that's not to like out you as like, oh, you're not fixed and everything's not perfect, but fuck, man, everything's not perfect.
Mhm.
Like, that's just a fact of life. That's where we're at. Like, addicts, alcoholics, we could have all the shiny shit in the world. Like, but we're still going to be fucked up inside. Like, we're still going to be going through it. Um, and you call me, and the greatest thing is you call me. Like, that's what this program is about. It's like you're feeling like crap. You give me a call. We talk it out. We end up laughing about shit, and you get back on the horse and you're right back in it. Like, and you've done the same thing for me. Like, we could have all the most beautiful shit in the world. Like you talking about, right? We got school, we got sports, we could have relationships, we could have friends, we could have everything. But our internal narrative can still be shit because that's what we're used to. That's what we grew up with. And that's when we let each other in to help each other out. Like, that's when I can lift you up. That's when you lift me up. That was the missing piece for me and for you, I think, as well. And it was great to hear you, man. I hadn't heard your story in a while, and I'm glad we were able to, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. It was dope to hear your story. I hear a lot of, like we said before, a lot of crossover into my story. And I related to the finding that group. I call them like my using buddies in high school. A lot of those dudes just don't really talk to anymore. But it was a lot of dudes. We're all thinking the same thing, going through the same thing, feeling other. And so you find a group of guys that feel other, and now you have a group. So you don't feel as other anymore. But I like to say, I could feel alone in a room full of people, and I still have that ability. But like, I related to that. Getting into the weed was a big part of my story too. Definitely. Um, Escaping some of those thoughts, at a certain point that didn't drown them out enough. I had to go onto some other stuff. But I think something that I really heard you and I'm seeing between you and Andrew is like, and maybe we don't talk about it enough, but the power of like when you're young in recovery, there's a lot of thoughts of like, for me at least, uh, I got some more runs in me. There's no way I have a problem yet. I'm too young for this. Those people have problems. Obviously, they're 30, 40, 50. Obviously, they blew up their life. I didn't blow up my life. I'm swimming at a high level. I would be able to rationalize. I remember hearing those voices a lot when I was early in treatment and in recovery. And I think to that is like you saw Andrew and saw some other guys a little bit older than you. And that played into, if they can do it, I can do it. You know what I mean? That's extremely powerful, I think. Uh, Extremely powerful, especially for people early in recovery, because it's our addiction really wants to point out like you're not, you didn't destroy your marriage. You didn't destroy your relationship with your kids. Like, yeah, you might have lost some friends. Yeah, your parents might be mad at you, but it's not that serious. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever heard
Mm-hmm.
that, but I heard that. And to meet Andrew, and for me, I met some guys that were a little bit older than me too, or near my age. And to listen to them, like you were saying at the pit, like those experiences of listening and hearing stories and empathizing with that and putting yourself there, what does this look like in 10 years? What does this look like in 5 years? That's extremely important. And so it's pretty cool to hear you say that and recognize that, because I think for me that played a big part in my early recovery and staying sober. Was like, I don't, I had people pull me aside, stare me in the fucking face and be like, stop now, this is what happens. And if you don't believe me, you can go out and try it again. Some of those like pretty hardcore serious talks from people. And I appreciate having those experiences. I think kind of what you were saying too is like going back to school. I did the same thing, bro. Like we said before the podcast started, I did my whole freshman year fucked up, won a national championship fucked up, which boosted everything. I was like, look, there's another thing for me to point at and be like, you don't have a problem, dog. You just won a national championship. How could you have a problem? And then that summer it got, ramped up, came back into my sophomore year, got into a fight like the first week, like hit a teammate, got in trouble with the police again, and then boom, found myself in treatment, And so I left my sophomore year, was out of school for like 8 months, 9 months, came back and did sophomore year again. And I hear you, that the structure and stuff like that is good, but I'm not saying you're doing this, but just like something that I think we really have to remember is putting our recovery first. I know you're like a high performing athlete, and sometimes like I put my sport in front of my recovery. I put my friends in front
Mm-hmm.
of my recovery, and I did that so much so that I got a girlfriend in college, and I was like, she became my recovery for a little bit in my early sobriety, and it gets back to being bad pretty fast. Um, again, I'm not saying this is what's happening with you, but just a warning that, like, I really started to believe that I was good. My self will was back, and I was like, I'm showing up to class, I'm going to school, I don't need the meetings anymore, and that shit spiraled real fast for me, real fast. And by the time I was a year and a half sober, I wasn't hitting meetings. I had my own, I lived by myself on campus. I would isolate, started skipping class, started skipping practice, started the idea of drinking and using consumed me. I didn't reach out for help. And I really don't, by the grace of having really close friends and a really good head coach that knew I was in a bad spot, got me through that. But being on a college campus, this, it's like, bro, that's probably the hardest place you could put yourself
Mm-hmm.
as someone early in recovery. So I commend you for that, but lean on people like Andrew, and I lean on people that are there. Just hearing that you're calling Andrew, is really important. I'm not trying to scare you either, bro. I'm just,
No,
you know,
I
yeah, like, yeah, I feel for you. You know what I mean? I don't want you to like go into any place like that, because it was not a fun, it was not a fun time. Um, But yeah, your story, I relate to a ton. Super happy you came on, and I loved listening to you.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
The thing too that I love, and before we end is like, you haven't used college as an excuse, right? Like,
Mm.
because you got sober before you went to college. Like, college is brand new experience. You're doing it sober, and you could have gone into this and been like, you know what? I'm not going to tell my coach. I'm not going to tell my teammates. I'm just going to be a normal dude who just like, I'm just not going to drink, whatever. But like, by my understanding, and you could, clarify, like, your coach knows what you've been through. Your teammates know, at least the ones that you're close to. Like, the people who see you every day and who really are the closest people to you in that campus they know, and it helps you keep, stay accountable. And I think that's so important. um like Mitch said, like his coach, like Greg and I was lucky enough to meet him on the pod. Like, you stand up dude, like, and he, beyond that, I mean, he's a lot of other amazing things, but like most importantly for me, he was a stand up dude. Like, and that's what he was for Mitch, because he knew what Mitch had gone through. And when Mitch was in those tough spots, like, that man helped him stay afloat. Like, and not saying that you never ever have to go to those extremes. Like, you know, Mitch was in a tough spot, but I know for a fact, talking to you, that your coach has been a big part of this,
Mm.
you know, and that's wicked important, I think,
Yeah, I mean, I just remember before I even got down there, me and my coach having a call, and he asked me, he's like, what was going on with your college essay?" Because I remember I was fresh out of treatment, and I wrote my college essay, and it had to do with like losing a friend, Molly Durkin, who we
Mm-hmm.
went, rest in peace, who we went and did treatment with and got close with, and loved her so much. And I think that, especially for me, being a little naive to the kind of how this disease works and realizing it's life or death, and that's not an exaggeration. It is life or it is death. And I think when it became the death like that, that really, really took me for a spin. And so I wrote my college essay like about that. Like I had a tattoo about it, all that. And I think um I just remember my coach calling me and he asked about it, and I was so hesitant and caught off guard and shocked and scared to tell him the truth that I told them the absolute minimum that I had to. I was like, I went to this place because I was feeling sad and I was drinking a little and smoking a little weed and all this stuff. But like he went out of his way and he called my head football coach and he called my head cross coach. He talked to my mom, and I just remember receiving a text from him being like, I love you, bud. And you're going to be a great man at this place. And he just like that feeling of not like, well, we can't trust this kid, he's going through this, like that meant so much to me. And about 2.5 3 months later he gave me a call and told me some personal info about someone in his family who was going through a similar thing and was in and out of rehab for alcoholism, and just told me, he was like, you're not alone in this and we got your back no matter what. And he's held this, like, since the day I got on that campus, he's been like one of the greatest mentors, one of the greatest people that I've ever been surrounded by in my life. I mean, he's just like, I'm sure he's a stand-up dude, and he's an older guy, but he's a stand-up dude, and he is a class act, and he teaches you, like, he doesn't really coach the game as much as he coaches life, and he coaches us how to be men on our team. And I remember this past spring when I got like some tough news about something that went on back home. I remember I went to him because he could relate really well with it. And he took me after practice and he called me. He goes, "Where are you?" And I was like, I'm in the facilities." And he walked me outside and we sat down for probably 2.5 hours and just talked about it. And he gave me advice, support, told jokes, laughed, all the emotion. And like, I just think having people like him, and like Mitch said, like having his coach just to, and I and my closer teammates as well, who were very similar, just having those people in my life and having them there, especially at college, because I think they know just as well as I do how difficult it is to be in early recovery and go into a college setting where it's prevalent everywhere that people are drinking and doing drugs. It's college. And I think he just showed me that it's like he'll always be there and he'll never give up on me. And I think that from that moment on, like from really getting down there, I was like, well, now he's family. And those, like, my teammates are now my family. And I think having a family of all those guys on a team and the coaching staff and then like anyone who knows that's like who knows my story, they've done more than everything for me. And I think that's played a huge role for me, being because it's the longest I've ever been away from my family down at college, and they've been just like another family there. So I think that's been really, really special. I can't really thank them enough for that.
It's beautiful,
Oh
man.
yeah, bro. Gotta lean on those people too.
Yeah, fuck.
It's a beautiful part, bro. Hard part for me for a long time was being able to ask for help when I actually needed it. Because that, like, I got this, I got this. That shit will fucking sneak up on you. But it sounds like you're doing like really, really good. And uh proud of you for what you're doing. From what Andrew just told me, you're absolute beast in your sport, and that's pretty sick. And yeah, man. I mean, it's like people don't like it when or not. I don't know if they don't like it or not, but the whole like you're a miracle thing is real. It's pretty crazy how like you can really really shift where you were and to see where you are now, and to hear gratitude in your voice is pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
But thank you
Been
to
beautiful.
everyone tuned in. Episode 43 with the boy Aidan. Really appreciate having you on, dog. That was awesome. And we will keep coming back.
Mm.
Yeah, I'll keep coming back. Mitch, make sure you wear 2 sweatshirts when you go outside today. I heard it's below 70 in LA.
Yep.